There we go. And I'm going to add that picture I just created so that when you're reading, we have both. There we go. We'll wait a few minutes for some people to hop on here.
Awesome. I
have to say, it's been funny because every once in a while I've been going outside and it just kind of feels like snow, but it also feels way too warm for snow on some other days.
I know there was I can't remember why I, like what particularly made me go outside this one particular night, but I stepped out and it smelled like snow and I was like, yes.
I completely understand. That's exactly it.
I honestly can't remember the last time we had a really good snow.
Right.
I mean, like 2012 maybe?
Right.
2013? I don't know. But it's quite a while.
The last one I remember, I want to say was 2013 or 2014 because we had so much snow that it bent our fence. Like I piled it up on a fence and it bent the top railing.
Really?
It was that one time we had like that huge, it was like 2 snowstorms back to back.
Oh, well, yeah. Wasn't it like 2 feet and then 2 feet or something?
Yes. It was something like that where it was like we kind of had a break in between and we shoveled it all and then it just covered it all back up again.
I think when I tried to drive back, that was when I worked for Yankee Candle and I had to drive back from the Towson Mall to my apartment, which was a 15-minute drive, and it took me 4 hours.
Yes, absolutely.
Little scary.
All right, it is 7 o'clock, 7:01. So if you are joining us, make sure you've got your drinks, popcorn, anything, a little snack you need, and leave a comment if you have any questions so we can answer questions at the end. But this is the voice of Liz. I'm going to hop on here in a second. I'm the owner of Capricos Books. Here we go. I'm going to put us both on the screen now. Yay! This is Liz from Capricos Books in my holiday glory of like I put on eyeshadow just for this, like my red and green terrible eyeshadow, and I have my Christmas sweater and which actually holds a bottle here, but yes. And you have a real tree up. This is my fake tree. This is actually a piece of cloth that looks like a Christmas tree in the background from IKEA.
I seriously thought that was like a real but fake tree.
Oh no, it's just a piece of fabric, and I love it so much. And you've got the beautiful real tree glowing in all of its glory.
Oh, yeah. This is not the earliest I've ever put up my tree. The earliest I ever put up my tree was November 12th. I think this year it was November 14th, so it wasn't that far off, but still.
I remember we were chatting last time, and I sent you right after. My friend had put her tree up that day. I think it was the 8th. I think it was November 8th. Oh, yeah. I sent that picture, and she has the cute little like 32nd Street sign and stuff like that.
It's 2020, friends. Like, make yourself happy.
Exactly.
True.
Yes. So, as I said earlier, I am Liz with Capricos Books, and I am here joined with the wonderful author Becky Titelman, who will be reading tonight. Not starting. This is our second in our like Christmas series. So if you missed the first one, last time she read Partridge and a Pear Tree, and that is on our YouTube channel. If you want to go back and watch that, you can watch her read the beginning parts of that. I love the fireplace too. That just caught my eye. I love fireplaces.
Yeah, I love it.
But if you want to go back and watch those videos, you're welcome to go back and watch that. My friend Laura joined us, and she says she never took her tree down from last year. Nice. There we go.
That's the way to do it. Each season, though, does she put like Valentine's decorations on it for like Valentine's Day? And
I love that idea. That's a good idea.
We'll make a turkey tree.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect. And then that's the Thanksgiving tradition, is that the evening of Thanksgiving, the kids take down all the stuff and redecorate it. I like that. Yeah. I might have to steal your idea there. So, without further ado, I will let you read the second book here this evening, or the first book this evening, but the second in our Halloween. We're talking about Thanksgiving. Apparently, I'm going backwards. Yes, our Christmas series. I'm thinking of the Wonky Witch because we started this on Halloween. I don't know what day it is, but I will let you take it away without further ado.
Oh, okay. So tonight I'm going to be reading from A Hippopotamus for Christmas, which was the third Christmas book that I wrote. And this came out in 2016. And it's about a little girl with a crazy imagination. So we're about to meet her right now. So the first chapter is called Meet Avery. Avery Stone wasn't the best student in her class. She wasn't the prettiest, the most popular, or even the most talented, but she did have one particular talent. It got her into a lot of trouble here and there, but she didn't seem to mind. She had an imagination. Avery's imagination was like a friend to her. It could take her to places that only existed in her mind, places with names like Weeble Hobble and Mind Over Matter. Those were two of her favorites. She went there often. They made her happy when she was bored, which was almost every day in school. As a matter of fact, that's where Avery's story begins. She was having a wonderful stroll with an elf down memory lane deep in the heart of Mind Over Matter when her friend Betty nudged her with her elbow. Avery's blue eyes flicked over to Betty, but Betty could tell that Avery wasn't really there. Her mind had left again. "Avery," Betty whispered, tucking her long dark hair behind her ears. "Pay attention. Mrs. Vanderwig will send you to the principal's office if you're not careful." Avery sighed as her mind returned to her body again. She hated when that happened. All the fun simply drained away. "Sorry," she mumbled, looking back up to the front of the classroom where Mrs. Vanderwig was droning on and on. "Where were you this time?" Betty asked, a smile tugging at her lips. Even though there were times when Betty thought her best friend was a little nuts, she loved hearing Avery's stories. "Memory Lane," Avery whispered back. "Again?" Betty asked, quickly making sure their teacher didn't hear them talking. "You were just there yesterday." "I met an elf this time," Avery said, smiling broadly and raising her eyebrows. "He was one of Santa's." "One of Santa's elves?" Betty said with wide eyes. "What was he like?" Suddenly the girls noticed that their teacher had stopped talking and the room was silent. Avery swallowed and looked up to the front of the class. There stood Mrs. Vanderwig with her hands on her hips, glaring at them. Betty slid down a bit in her seat, trying to become invisible. Avery simply had a staring contest with Mrs. Vanderwig, and the whole class was watching. It was a typical day for Avery Stone. "Seriously, Avery, you're going to get in real trouble one of these days," Betty was saying as the girls walked home through the snow after school. They both had their book sacks slung over their shoulders. As the winter wind whistled in their ears, Betty pulled her blue wool cap down tighter. Avery didn't mind the bitter cold. Her hat was still smashed inside her book bag. She loved winter. "No way," Avery said, pushing one of her short blonde braids back. "You will too," Betty protested, seriously worried for her friend. "You could even get suspended." "Suspended? For what?" Avery asked, looking over to Betty for an explanation. "All I was doing was sitting there." Betty thought about it for a minute. Avery hadn't been passing notes or making spitballs. She really was just sitting there. She was always just sitting in class, even when her mind went wandering. "Well, aren't you scared that you'll fail history?" "No," Avery said, shaking her head. "I know it all already. That's why I'm bored all the time." Betty stared over at Avery with her eyes wide. "You know it all? You know everything that's ever happened in history?" Avery smiled and shrugged. "Yep, pretty much." Exasperated, Betty said, "And just how do you know everything?" "My parents are history teachers at the college, aren't they?" Betty nodded. "And I've been to every historical landmark on this side of the country, haven't I?" Betty nodded again. "And the only thing my parents talk about at dinner is history, right?" Betty sighed and nodded a third time. That was true. Every time Betty stayed at Avery's house for dinner, she felt like she was eating in a classroom. "Well then," Avery said. "That doesn't mean you know everything that's ever happened, Avery," Betty protested. "I guess there might be some things that I don't know about. I'll let you know when Mrs. Vanderwig mentions one." Betty's eyes grew wide again. You mean you've already known about everything she's covered this whole year? Yep, Avery answered. She really did like history, and it was all her mom and dad's fault. Betty looked back down at the icy sidewalk, trying to comprehend what her friend was admitting. Wow, she said in awe. Yep, Avery repeated. That's why I'm so bored. I can imagine, Betty agreed. You want to come over for some hot chocolate? Avery asked, changing the subject. Betty's face broke into a grin. You bet. When the two girls entered the warmth of Avery's kitchen, there was a pot of hot chocolate already steaming on the stovetop. Avery's mom was sitting at the kitchen table, her head bent over a history book as usual. She looked up as the girls came into the room and dropped their book sacks by the back door. Mrs. Stone would have been very pretty if her light brown hair wasn't wrapped up in a ratted, messy bun on the top of her head, with pieces sticking out all over the place. And the glasses that constantly slid down her nose made her look like an old librarian. She rarely wore makeup unless she had a big presentation at the college, but her students respected her and looked up to her. After all, she pretty much knew everything about everything. She lived in her books most of the time. Well, when she wasn't with Avery. Avery tended to need a lot of looking after, and Betty knew all about that. Hi, Mom, Avery said joyfully, throwing her arms around her mom's neck for a big afternoon hug. Hello, sweetheart. How was school? Her mom smiled genuinely. Hi there, Betty dear. Hi, Mrs. Stone, Betty said, returning the smile. It was awful, Mom, Avery protested, scooting out of her mother's grasp to check on the steaming hot chocolate. Can we have some? Awful? Why? Mrs. Stone asked, her face showing her concern. Avery spun around to face her mom dramatically, her short blonde braids flipping across the tops of her shoulders. Mrs. Vanderwig is the most boring teacher ever. Can't you just come teach history at my school, Mom? Of course not, Avery. I teach college history. It's much harder and more in-depth than your classes. Mrs. Stone looked over at Betty, who simply shrugged. Why is Mrs. Vanderwig so horrible? She never makes the class fun. We don't act out any of the battles. We don't draw maps or do anything exciting. We just have to sit there and listen to her go on and on. You're too old for that nonsense, Avery, her mother said sternly. You don't need to draw in class anymore. You should be able to pay attention and take notes like everyone else your age. You can handle that, can't you, dear? Avery sighed loudly and turned back around to grab a mug for her hot chocolate. I guess so, she said with a whine. Betty and Mrs. Stone exchanged glances across the room. Then let's make a deal, Mrs. Stone said, standing and going over to help her daughter pour some mugs of steaming hot chocolate. A deal? Avery said, looking up at her mom. Yes, Mrs. Stone replied. You pay attention in history class and take notes like everyone else, and then we'll get you a very special Christmas gift this year. Avery crunched her eyebrows in confusion. But your gifts are always special to me, Mom. She shoved her arms around her mother's waist and squeezed. Mrs. Stone couldn't help but smile down at her sweet yet sometimes mischievous daughter. I'm sure, dear. But your father and I will get you something really special. Like what? Avery asked, stepping back and eyeing her mom curiously. You will have to decide that. Her mom turned to the girls and gestured for Avery to sit at the table with Betty. Avery sat down slowly. You mean I can pick anything? Anything at all? Well, you must be somewhat reasonable, her mom agreed, setting the piping mugs of hot chocolate on the table in front of the girls. And I'll need to see your notes from class. Avery took a tentative sip of her drink and sat back with marshmallow stuck to her upper lip. Do I have a spending limit? Mrs. Stone crossed her arms. Oh, I do hope you won't break our bank accounts. Wow. Avery sat back in her chair. Betty was just dying to know what was racing through her best friend's mind. You really mean it, Mom? I can choose anything at all? Yes, Mrs. Stone said, turning back to the stove to help herself to a mug. Although your father might not be pleased I made this arrangement. Avery smiled at her mom and licked her sugary lip clean. I promise, Mom, I won't go crazy. You'd better not, her mom said sternly after a sip from her mug. Any ideas? Betty asked, barely able to hold still. She couldn't wait to hear what Avery was going to ask for. A marble chess set? A telephone in her room? A pony? I'll tell you later, Avery whispered. Betty knew it was going to be good. The next chapter is called The Man in the Red Suit. The next evening, Avery went to the mall with her mom to get some more Christmas shopping done for her dad. Avery loved the mall at Christmas time. Most people couldn't stand being anywhere near it, but Avery loved the hustle and bustle, the decorations, and especially visiting Santa. That was her favorite thing of all. The previous night, Betty had begged her to spill the beans about what big present she was going to ask for. To be honest, Avery hadn't decided yet. When she told Betty that, you would have thought her friend was a giant balloon that had just been poked with a needle. Betty whined and complained, but Avery insisted that she just hadn't made up her mind. She promised that Betty would be the first one to know, even before she talked to her parents. That had seemed to make Betty happy for the time being. As Avery walked along, holding tightly to her mom's hand so she wouldn't get lost in the shuffle, she couldn't take her eyes off of the sparkling lights around her. It was as if she had plunged headfirst into a winter wonderland or Santa's village, and Avery was in heaven. The huge pillars were wrapped in swirls of colored lights and garland. The line to see Santa was practically a mile long, and the scent of cinnamon and Christmas cookies hung heavy in the air outside of the candle store. Avery could have stayed there forever, completely ignoring the shoving kids and impatient parents with arms full of bags and packages. "Avery, are you sure you want to see Santa tonight?" Mrs. Stone asked as she eyed the line that wrapped around the center of the mall where Santa's big red chair was nestled. Avery shrugged. "Sure, why not?" "Well, the line is awfully long, honey." "I don't mind, Mom." "Really? Are you sure?" "Of course," Avery said with a smile. "I can wait in line by myself." Mrs. Stone nervously glanced back at the line. I don't know about that, Avery." "Oh, come on, Mom, I'll be fine," Avery said with a confident nod as they reached the end of the line. She let go of her mom's warm hand and stepped into her place in line. Mrs. Stone still didn't look convinced. "Mom, go ahead. Go get the shirt for Dad. I'll be perfectly fine." Avery flashed her mom a huge, toothy grin, and Mrs. Stone couldn't help but smile back. "Okay, fine." Her mom leaned down and looked her right in the eyes. "But I'll be back soon. Don't talk to strangers and stay by Santa if you finish before I get back." Avery looked at the line that seemed suddenly longer than before. "I don't see that happening, Mom." Her mom laughed. "All right, then. Be good." Mrs. Stone kissed the top of Avery's head and waved as she started to walk toward the department store at the other end of the mall. But suddenly she turned back to Avery. "And don't eat the candy cane until I can see how big it is," she shouted over the bustling crowd. Avery rolled her eyes. "Okay," she yelled back. Mrs. Stone was swallowed up in the throng of shoppers, and Avery focused on the line ahead of her. She wondered how long she would have to wait to see Santa. Hopefully it wouldn't be too long. She guessed it would all depend on how greedy the kids in front of her were. Avery's parents had always told her to only ask Santa for one gift. That way the poor kids standing in line behind her didn't have to wait forever. And truthfully, Avery didn't mind. It made perfect sense to her. After about half an hour, Avery finally reached the front of the line. She was so excited. She hadn't even noticed that the boy in front of her had picked his nose and wiped it on the velvet ropes that held them in line. She hadn't seen the mom that got mad at her little girl for tugging on Santa's beard. And Avery certainly hadn't watched the mean older brother tie his two sisters' braids together in boredom. Actually, Avery had spent a little time in mind over matter with her new elf friend. Her brain may have wandered here and there, but she did keep her eye on Santa as she got closer and closer to his red chair. Her short trip to mind over matter had made one thing quite clear to Avery. She had finally decided what her big gift was going to be. And even though she felt bad about it, Betty wasn't going to be the first one to know. Santa was. But Avery was pretty sure that Santa wouldn't tell Betty. She would make sure of that. When Avery was beckoned forward by the red-headed elf that flanked Santa's left side, she thought she might jump out of her skin with excitement. She practically leaped onto Santa's lap, grinning from ear to ear. "Whoa, well, hello there, little girl," Santa exclaimed as Avery knocked his breath away for a moment. "Hi there," Avery said happily, her eyes twinkling. Santa could see it. The true heart of a child was sitting right in front of him, the true meaning of Christmas. This was why he came to the mall every day. His eyes were suddenly flooded with merriment to match Avery's. Avery's spirit was bubbling over with joy. "I'm sorry I jumped on you so hard, sir," she admitted after a giggle. Santa laughed. "Oh, don't worry about it. I'm quite all right and quite padded." he said, patting his squishy tummy. My name's Avery. Is it now? Avery nodded. Yes, and I'd like to ask you for something for Christmas. What can I bring you, Avery? Santa asked. Well, it's not a present or anything, Avery said. Confusion spread across the man's rosy cheeks. It's not? No, sir. Avery shook her head. I'd like to ask your opinion on something. My opinion? Santa chuckled. Yes, Avery said, hoping she had his full attention. This was important. Go ahead, he said. What do you need my opinion on, child? Well, you see, my mom and I made a bargain that I would pay attention in history class and take good notes like I'm supposed to. If I do that, she and my dad will get me anything I want for Christmas. Anything? Within reason, of course, Avery added. Of course, Santa agreed, nodding. So what I want to know is, well, what do you think about... Avery paused and leaned over and whispered into Santa's ear. His eyes grew wide and his head whipped back in shock. A what? I think that's what I want, Avery said matter-of-factly, sitting up straight and proud. A hippopotamus. Santa cleared his throat and stared at the girl that sat before him. And why on earth would you want that? Avery shrugged. I think they're neat. But she could tell that Santa didn't. You don't think that's a good idea, sir? Well, now, he said, tugging on his beard in thought. I can't imagine that a hippopotamus would be very useful to a youngster like you. Where would you keep it? Avery's eyes went to the ceiling for a moment as she thought deeply. I guess they are rather large, aren't they? Santa nodded. I suppose I would keep her in the backyard. That way she wouldn't make a mess in the house. She? Santa asked, his eyes twinkling again. Yes, I would name her Matilda. Santa just about threw Avery off of his lap as he erupted into laughter. And these were deep belly laughs, laughs that shook like a bowl full of jelly. Avery looked at him confused. Didn't he think her idea was a good one? When Santa had calmed down a bit, he realized that Avery wasn't laughing. And he cleared his throat, putting on a serious face as best as he could. So, Avery, he said, looking into her mischievous eyes, this is really what you want me to bring to you? No, sir, she replied. I'm sorry, I'm not following. I just wanted your opinion, sir. Avery slid down off the man's lap. But I guess that my idea doesn't make much sense. Sorry to have wasted your time. With her shoulders drooped, Avery walked down the small steps from Santa's chair, leaving the man staring after her, completely in awe of the little girl that had just left him. And that was a typical visit to Santa for Avery Stone. And that's all. Is Liz still there?
I muted myself, sorry. Yay! I try to mute myself, but yay, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for getting us started. So that was a perfect little introduction to Avery and her
imagination
wish.
Yeah. People ask me like who was one of my favorite characters to write, and she definitely was one of my favorite characters to write. And her character arc that she goes through in the book is really neat to watch. So,
well, and I'll say I'll let you tell the anecdote you told me at the beginning, and we had discussed the other day too, how this is kind of some of your work that you recently rediscovered in a way.
Is that I have some of my books I only had proof copies of, and I didn't have final copies. And so when I had ordered some copies in for an event, I grabbed some of the copies to have for myself as final copies. And I just started reading this one. And it had been, probably about 4 years since I had really read it. And I was like, this book is kind of cool. I like this book, if I do say so myself. But it's a really neat look at Christmas. And it kind of has some notes of my childhood in it. And so, yeah, it means a lot to me. This character was really, really fun to write. With her imagination being so crazy. So.
And one of the questions we got was, what age or grade would this be for? And I replied, I said, it's great for 8 to 12-year-olds to read on their own, but absolutely can be read to younger kids.
I do have a lot of grandparents and parents that will write to me and say some of my Christmas books have become traditions, that they'll read a chapter a night to their grandkids or to their kids leading up to Christmas. So it's something that you could read throughout the month of December and finish up like Christmas Eve. So, yeah. But yeah, third to fifth grade is usually the geared age. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we are doing a little bit by just teasing these and having a little entry, little bit of them before the holidays. So we have 2 more books in the holiday series. I guess we'll call it, not really a series because they're individual.
I call it the collection.
Yes. Holiday collection. So you have 4 total. And like we said, last time you read Partridge in a Pear Tree. And then, so you have 2 more. Do you want to tell us anything about those right now?
Oh, sure. The Stable Elf was the very first holiday book that I wrote and that I released. And that is kind of the backstory of Rudolph. So we all know the story of Rudolph, but it's about the little elf named Jingle who it's his first year on the job taking care of the reindeer. So he's the first one that discovers Rudolph's nose glows. And so he thinks, oh my gosh, is he sick? What do I do? Do I tell Santa? So it's kind of all about what he goes through around the story that we all know already of Rudolph. So, and I had so much fun with that one that I wrote the other one, A Boy and His Snowman. And that is kind of in a similar way to the story of Rudolph. It's the story of Frosty and how he came about. And we know he thumped his way away, but does he come back? And that's all about the kids that built him and why they built him, and gave it more of a modern twist to the story. So those are. I know we haven't set dates yet, but I'm sure you'd love to. Exactly. I'm sure you'd love to share those. So I think if I have any say in it, not that I do, but if I have any say in it, I think Boy and a Snowman should come next because I feel like Rudolph is a super like Christmas Eve story. That really makes me think. So we can do that a lot closer to Christmas. So we'll do 2 more of these story time events. And I asked if anyone wanted to leave a comment with their favorite Christmas tradition or holiday, and I can never pronounce this word, even though I worked at IKEA and I know Swedish, but it's the celebration of books and chocolate all day on Christmas Eve. And that's like that has become such a great thing. I feel like I've heard so much about it. I don't know if it's just because I'm in the book industry so much more that I hear a lot about it, but everybody shares it with me. I want to say the past 4 years, more and more people in America are trying to celebrate that kind of a holiday because it's really decompressing and stepping away from technology on Christmas Eve and really taking that time to just read. So I think on Christmas Eve. I've seen it's only on Christmas Eve.
Well, that's the holiday is you exchange a bunch of books, but then there's also like I'm sure I know what you're gonna say, the Advent calendars, the book Advent calendars,
where you wrap them, 24 books and open one each night. Yeah.
Yes, I know that can get. Excuse me. I'm talking too much. I haven't talked all day. So that can get overwhelming for some people, but that's a great, a little teaser again. That's really great for young kids because it's easy to do with picture books. Right. Definitely, and unwrap for a year. So I think that's a really great Christmas holiday tradition, any holiday you're celebrating. So yeah, we will meet back here. I would say I'm going to put it online, but I was looking at the calendar and I was going to say the 6th since we're just kind of on this every 2 week schedule kind of thing. If you want to do that.
I'll have to look. Yes. But, yeah.
We'll make this live decision. And I always pick 7 o'clock. If you guys have a really hard time with 7 o'clock, let me know. These are always saved and they will be on our YouTube channel. So you can always rewatch them at a time that is convenient for you. You can always leave comments because I can go back to them and look at them and share them with Becky and we can answer them in the next video. Or I can just message leave a comment there with the answer. But yeah.
Yeah.
Was the 6th good for you?
Is what? Oh, 6
o'clock. The 6th.
Oh, the 6th. I'll have to look.
Okay. We'll talk about it later, and you guys will see it because I will share the event And again, if you have any questions or anything, please leave them there and share this video with your friends. I just picked 7 o'clock. I was talking about the time. I always pick 7 o'clock because I thought that was a good story time in the evening to get started. So again, yes, perfect for the fire. Hot cocoa. I finished mine while you were talking. So I have to go in and make some more. Definitely the season for it. So I wish we were a little bit colder. And that's the other reason I want Boy and His Snowman, I think, to be the next book, because as we were talking at the very beginning, I really want it to snow. I want to see some snow this year. I think that would make me feel a lot better.
I think that'll be good because Boy and His Snowman is, like I said, it's more of a modern twist on Frosty. So, and the beginning isn't quite at Christmas yet, but when for the stable elf, that's actually in Santa's village. So that'll be better for closer to Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, if anybody, again, leave any questions, comments you have, but thank you so much for joining us. And again, all of Becky's books, I'm going to put them up here on the screen. They can all be found at capricoastbooks.com. These are the holiday titles. She does also have the Wonky Witch series, books 1 through 5. Those are as she's described before, a female Harry Potter. She's got a wonderful character named Maud and all of her friends. And they've gone through 5 years of school at this point, which is very exciting. So lots of adventures to have. And so that's that kind of age-appropriate story. And then there is also the standalone other novel, A Boy and His Dog. No.
It's a dog's life.
A dog's life. I can't. It's a dog's life. There's a dog and a boy on the cover. It's a dog's life. So, and I think we might have a live. No, we did that one in person. We did that event in person. So maybe we'll have to do a reading of that in the spring. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Again, you can find those books at capricoastbooks.com. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Have a great night, and we hope to see you next time, whenever that is.
See you soon.
Bye.